Hello everyone. So now let's discuss the last process of scope management knowledge area, which is control scope. So just like any other knowledge area, just like time management, just like schedule management, cost management, quality management, resource management, whatever you talk about, we will always have a control process. So when we were in the similar to plan, like we'll have plan scope management, plan schedule management, plan cost management. Similarly, we also have a control process like control cost, control schedule, control scope. So this is, I call it as a common process because what you do is basically you're trying to managing the changes to the scope. And if there is a change, then you are making sure that you are following the proper change control procedures. So let's see, what does this involve? The process that ensures proper handling of scope related change requests. So since I'm doing control scope, I'm referring to I'm referring more towards the scope related changes and what impact does the scope related change has on the other two legs of the triple constraint triangle, which is your time and the cost. So it's a monitoring control process which prevents scope change requests from overwhelming the project, and it prevents the unnecessary change requests. So customer might sometimes come up with some unnecessary change requests which are no longer required or which are not that important or pertinent. It's your job as a project manager to make sure that they stick to the scope. And if they are asking for more features, then you have to follow the change control process. It's like you have to do it simply. So let's see change control. All change requests must be processed through the perform integrated change control process. So again, this is a common statement which I would probably use it in all the control processes. Like when I do the control cost, I would say the same thing. All change requests must be processed through the perform integrated change control process. This is like must. Importance. It is important to understand the underlying cause of the change request. Yes, what was the reason of that change request? Was it something the team missed, or was it something the customer was not able to identify, or was it like the stakeholder was even missed, right? So, and because of which the requirement did not got captured, and now you have to do that requirement. So that's also like a part of scope as well. Then we have the variance. Variance is it should be the variance control scope should be invoked whenever there is a difference between the work results and the documented scope. So basically what you do is you do a comparison of planned versus actual. So what was really planned and what you actually did, that's control scope for you. Let's see some of the ITTOs of this process. So on the first we have the inputs, then we have the tools, and finally we have the outputs. On the input side we have the project management plan. We have the project management plan, and after that we have the project documents, then we have work performance data and OPA. Tools, we have the data analysis, and outputs will have the plan updates and the document updates. Since work performance data was the input, so you will definitely have the work performance information. Of course, change requests, you try to prevent them, but it's not necessary that you would be successful in preventing them, right? So you'll get a lot of change requests as well as an output. Okay. So now let's discuss these inputs, tools, techniques, and output in much more detail. Again, I repeat, ask these questions to yourself. Why you need these inputs? Why you need these tools? Why you need these outputs? Or why this output was generated? When you start asking these questions to yourself, I'm pretty sure you would be confident, you will do the right thing, and your concepts would be improved. And that's where I come in, because I'm trying to build your concepts. So let's see, first we have the project management plan. Since we are controlling the scope, we definitely need the scope management plan and the requirement management plan. And if there is a change request, how to work towards it, you need the change and the configuration management plan as well. Of course, it's all about scope. So you need the scope baseline and the performance measurement baseline. We would be discussing the performance measurement baseline in sometime later. But again, you need all of those things to make sure that you are properly able to manage the changes to the scope. On the project document side, we have the lessons learned register. So whatever mistakes which have been done by your previous projects, or whatever good things you have gained from this project or bad things you have done in this project. You wanna, you wanna have a track of all those things. You want to make sure that they are helping you in tracking the scope, in helping you to control the scope. So you need that lessons learned register as an input. And of course you need the requirements documentation and the traceability matrix, because scope is all about the requirements, right? If you have to control it, you have to control the requirements. Then you have the work performance data, the raw observation. Okay guys, keep one thing in mind, that work performance data will always be an input to these control processes. What do I mean by that? Like if you're talking about control cost, control schedule, control quality, control risk, control procurements, all of those would always have work performance data as an input, which is your raw observation. And if work performance data is an input, your output will always be information, because data gets converted into information. And if information is an input to any of the process, like any of the out of the 49 processes, that will get converted into work performance reports. So another thing, for all these control processes, you will always have change request as an output. You're trying to prevent change requests from happening if they are unnecessary, but you end up getting the legitimate change requests, of course, and sometimes the not so legitimate change requests, but you have to do it. Like, let's see some of the tools and techniques. So first we have the data analysis, which is the variance analysis and the trend analysis. So if you remember, variance analysis, this was something which we discussed in the integration management knowledge area, which was all about the planned versus actuals. What you planned and what you actually did. If you remember the example which I gave you, that you were planning to watch all the integration videos, but you were only able to watch the top three, the first three. So that was a variance, right? So that's your variance analysis. Then if you remember the trend analysis, the example I gave you was about the stock market example, like the e-commerce companies. Their stock actually rose at the holiday season, at around the Thanksgiving, Christmas. You'll see that they are people are heavily spending, and their stocks would also rise. Then on the output side, we have the plan updates and the document updates, the important ones. Since data was the input, you'll get information as an output. And of course, as I told you, you will also have change request as an output. Let's see what are the things which are part of project management plan. Anything related to scope. Scope baseline, schedule baseline, scope management plan, performance measurement baseline. Also, all of the important ones are actually an input here. Most importantly, all the baselines are getting updated here. Because you're trying to control, there might be a change request. You might have to go back and update these baseline. Then since data was the input, you got information as an output. Then on the document side, you will get the lessons learned register. Sometimes in order to control a scope, you might get to know that, oh, this was a good thing which you did. So you have to go back and update the lessons learned register. Similarly, when sometimes you're trying to control the scope, you might end up with the new requirements being added to your project. And since new requirements are being added, you have to go back and update the requirements documentation and your traceability matrix. Finally, let's do a quick revision of this process. So whatever things we did, focus on the tool variance analysis and trend analysis. Remember, variance analysis was planned versus actual, and trend analysis was the stock market example which I gave. Know that control scope is linked to the overall perform integrated. So all of these control processes are actually linked to these perform integrated change control process. So if there is an issue, it has to follow a proper change control process. Know that this process is important to prevent unnecessary change requests. So you don't like change requests. Remember, you don't like unnecessary change requests. And if you try to control the processes, control the scope in a good way, as per which is defined in your scope management plan, you would be successful in doing that. Know that both products as well as the project scope are being monitored. So it's not just specific to your product scope, the features. It's also about the project scope which is being monitored here. So this marks the completion of scope management knowledge area. We discussed a lot of good concepts in this knowledge area, a lot of good questions specifically around the collect requirements, WBS, validate scope. You will get a lot of good questions from them. But this video is of no use until unless you practice some questions, practice some real scenario based questions, and just go ahead and go to our website www.eduhubspot.com, or you can actually, if you don't have time to carry your laptop or tablet, you prefer more on phone, just go on the Google your app store or Play Store, download our app and start doing the questions. Of course, reach out to us, share your questions, share your results. If you have any questions, send us an email and I'll try my best to make sure that I reply to you within 24 hours. Thank you and all the best. Talk to you in the next knowledge area, which is our time management.